Evening and a warm welcome to everybody here in the audience at ESMT campus and to our online audience as well, to our tonight's online session on walking the tightrope of AI innovation and data privacy by Dr. Mini. My name is Carolin Puppel and it's my great pleasure to be your moderator for tonight's online session. Corporations and both individuals need to navigate through an increasingly complex environment of technological developments and regulation. So on the one hand, there's this big promise of reaping benefits through cost efficiency or revenue gains by implementing AI in processes, new products and services. On the other hand, there are risks involved and increasingly complex regulations that companies need to follow. To provide us with insights into managing these challenges, we are privileged to have Dr. Min Yi with us tonight. Dr. Yi has a wide background in data science and machine learning with extensive experience in data security, GDPR platforms, and compliance. But also we are very proud to count Dr. Yi as one of our alumni from the executive education programs, where she recently graduated from the executive transitioning program ETP. Currently, she is the founder and CEO of AInvone GmbH, where she helps companies develop data strategies that manage to combine innovation and both compliance with regulatory standards. So tonight, over the next 40 minutes or so, Dr. Yi will explore with us how businesses can navigate both the evolving landscape of AI opportunities while adhering to strict data regulations. For the audience online, if you want to add any questions to us, there is a Slido platform, and if you put in the code MINYI, you will be able to register your questions. We will be making sure to look at them, and then at the end we will have 20 minutes to go through your questions, and we look forward to a lively discussion. But now, please help me welcome warmly Dr. Min Yi on stage.
Thank you. Thank you, Carolin. Okay, so Carolin has also introduced me already. Fabian, can I have my slides, please? Thank you. So today we are here to talk about, the title is super fancy. Thank you, ESMT colleagues. We're talking about how we can somehow maneuver between all the innovations. We want to grow fast, we want to excel, but at the same time, we also want to be compliant, because if we don't, there are consequences of all kinds. Before we go into the content of today, I will shortly introduce myself. Carolin already did a very good job, so I'll make it very short. I have a PhD in computer science from EPFL Switzerland, with focusing on machine learning, modeling, and algorithm development. And then afterwards, I went back to Germany. I grew up in Germany. And then after my time in Switzerland, I went back to Germany, had machine learning and AI experience in different fields that went more and more from very technical parts into consumer rights, into consumer AI, into also the data protection part, and then now founding my own company in AMBA GmbH. Last year, I was admitted to the ESMT Executive Transition Program. That's a very nice executive MBA program. I would highly recommend to everybody who is interested also in such a education. And I'm honored, I'm happy to be back here at ESMT to see also familiar faces again and to be here as a speaker. Thank you very much. So now that I've talked about myself, I'd like to know about you. Can you please all take your phones, either scan the code, I'm talking to everyone, either scan the code or put in the number 75626618. And I'd like to understand more about today's audience. So, are you ready? Yes. Good. Fabian, can you change to the Mentimeter? Thank you. So let's see. What's your background? Where do we sit? Business management, engineering technology, education, ESMT makes sense. Environmental and agricultural sciences, mathematics and statistics. Okay. 23 people, 25, 26. We have more people around. Come on, don't be shy. Yes, can you please bring up the QR code again, please, Fabian? There you go. Okay, let's go back to the Mentimeter, please, to the poll. Thank you. Okay, it looks much better now. Good. So we have a lot of audiences in business management as background and engineering technology. Very nice. And then also education, math. Okay, good. Very nice. Thank you. Fabian, please, can we have the next page, please? So same Menti, next page. What industry are you in? Where do you work in right now? Or what occupies you these days? Let's put it this way. Okay, tech, finance, professional healthcare, energy, real estate, transportation. Okay, that sounds good. So from the previous slides, we had quite a lot of people in management business and also tech, and we have still quite many in tech communications and professional services. Good, thank you. Next page, please. Last one, what's your role? No worries, your tasks for today will be gone soon, so you can then rest for approximately 40 minutes. Student, manager, individual contributors, principal contributors, C-suite. Okay, that's very good. So we have quite a diverse setup. That's very nice. And good. Then I will expect with this diverse setup, I expect very vivid, fruitful conversations exchange afterwards, okay? Okay, good. Thank you very much. Can I have the slides back, please, Fabian? Thank you. Good. Thank you. So why are we sitting here and talking about this whole topic? When I started my company, not that long ago, actually, I was wondering what would I do? And I had a lot of people ask me, hey, man, you're in AI for so many years already. What can we do? Because everybody talks about AI, although they actually mean Gen AI these days. And people are wondering, can we use it? Why can we use it? How can we use it? Why can we use it not? So we did some stats here, and this is stats from end of last year. It's a bit overtaken, I agree. However, I don't have the current stats yet. So by the end of the last year, what we can see is that there have been only 8% of the enterprises in Europe who are using AI. And here, AI, here we're not talking about Gen AI, we're talking about general, right? Everything. Where we talk about machine learning, visual image processing, and everything. So it's the very broad field of AI that could have been applied. People were looking what's the percent of enterprises that had some kind of AI applied or used in a company. It was only 8%. As a reference, US approximately 40% by the end of last year, and May 24, approximately 70. That's just an estimation, okay? So we are wondering why. My friends were asking these questions, my colleagues were asking these questions, my clients were asking these questions. I was also thinking, why? Well, we have a lot of companies global-wide who were very successful, for example, Amazon, who then said, okay, we are amazing, very good. Let's also enter the European market. But what happens? When they enter, there are also regulations here, policies and laws that they might not have been too familiar about with, because there are different regions, different laws, different regularities. And what happens is there are a lot of breaches of regulatories that people were not aware of that they did. As an example, Amazon 2021, only 3 years ago, there was a fine of $886 million. And the reason is that's for GDPR. So they were not GDPR compliant. And what exact point is that that's the laser? Ah, that's a laser. Okay, good. So, and the reason why they were not compliant is that they didn't have any data breach. So there was no data leaked to any outside world. It was all within Amazon. However, the way as they were using the data, so they were using the customer's personal history data for targeting. We know targeting, right? Everybody has done some e-commerce shopping, I guess. And we often get targeted marketing, targeted advertisement, right? And that's okay to use it. However, if you as a provider are not getting the consent of your customers, then this is against GDPR. And that's what they were not aware of, or at least that's what was not put in place. They get in the consent, and that's why they were fined $886 million. Similar in Google, it's also about a consent, but that's actually about the refusing. So what happened in Google here with the 90 million fine 21 is that their users on YouTube could not easily refuse cookies as easily as they could accept the cookies. And that means the users of these platforms, they have to be protected. I have to be able to say no if I want to. And they didn't apply here, so another big fine. Similar case about data request, lack of transparency. I realize I have too many slides for this number of minutes, so I will be flying through a few things a little bit. But this is one fine that I really like to go a bit in here, which is actually so far the biggest fine so far, which is 1.3 billion US dollar. Last year only 1 year ago, Meta. What happened here is that, you know, Meta also has Facebook, right? Not just Instagram and WhatsApp, but also Facebook. And Facebook started back then in the US, Silicon Valley. What happened here is that they have been transferring the Facebook users from the EU, the data of these people, they have been transferred to the US the whole time. And this is GDPR also includes the transfer of data. Although these data have not been shared with any other company, it has been only transferred from Facebook EU users to Facebook US database, okay? But this transfer itself actually led to the fact that the data collected from the EU users were no longer as much protected after the transfer, because in the US policies, they have less strict data protection for private users. And also there's the rights to intercept the data and to also look into the data from the US intelligence agencies. And that is why, and this has been actually a suit case that went on for over 10 years, I think. They said the whole time there's no data breach, there's nothing ongoing, it's only within our company. However, this transfer itself made them finable and against, plus a few other smaller things, plus a few other things, altogether 1.3 billion. So these are cases that make us really being aware of, okay, GDPR, it's not just being put there to be nicely looking, but it also is important that we really think about it. How are we using the data that we create, that we collect, and how can we make sure that whatever we do with it is actually compliant? Because we want to make sure that we don't have to pay 1.4 billion. Although I don't think so, because that's depending on your fiscal year's turnover, it's only 4% maximum, but that's the global one. So if you have a company that's more than just one company, but has no holding structure and so on, you might come into larger numbers quickly. A few more cases, we won't go into details. OpenAI suits are ongoing by them, just for information. So OpenAI just started last year, right? There are a lot of people who have been trying to make OpenAI aware of data issues. And a lot of things have already improved, right? So back then, we couldn't easily, I mean, back then all the data, when they started ChatGPT 3.5, all the data were directly put into the model and for retraining. Nowadays, you can click, you have the Teams office options and so on, that your data that you put in as prompt will not be reused for training if you click the non-reuse for training. However, there are other things that put down. For example, inaccurate data output of actually known people. This is also a part of GDPR, that your data must be accurate, and so on. So let's stay tuned. Over the next few years, I'm pretty sure we will have new suits and fines coming out. I hope it will not affect any of you, okay? Good. We spoke about Europe. The last slide was only about Europe. Now here, this is generally speaking, also in the US, we have a lot of data compromises, and the number of data compromises are not decreasing. Although we are thinking, at least I thought that GDPR has been out for a while, but still, it's still growing because also the people who are using data and AI are much more there. There are more organizations using this, but not everybody is debriefed or onboarded on this whole topic. So this is still a huge topic. What is there that can help us to be compliant, to get compliant, to prepare us? So these are a few comments. These are a few examples. The four main examples that I put down here. There will be more coming up, and there are also more on the field, more smaller things, minor things, but also depending on what industry you are in. Is it like very sensitive industry like healthcare or medicine and so on? Then you might have also other more specified regulatory policies that you need to obey to. We can go a little bit deeper. As of here, the first two that I have put down here, these are ISO 27001 certification that every organization, if you have some kind of data, should go through. I hope you have. Good. And also the type 2 certification that is also about information security, also about structures. They all are aligned with the technical setup of your systems. So it's not only about data, but also generally speaking, how is your technical setup, your system built such that you have, for example, physical security, that you have identity and access control, that you have role-based access control and so on, and that you have also a network that is safe, that you have computing systems safe and so on. And after all this technical setup that is actually safe, then we think about, probably at the same time, you think about how you can make sure that your data infrastructure and data flow and ingestion pipeline setups, that they are also safe. And here we come to the point of GDPR and AI Act. GDPR, effective since May 18. That's also not too long time ago. So a lot of companies who were starting before that time, they had a lot of, well, legacy problems in their infrastructure. And they had to go through transformation, unfortunately. And for those who are after 2018, we know that these are the consequences, up to 4% global turnover as fines, right? And then it's good when you start a company that every company has some kind of data somewhere that you can make sure that you are somehow compliant, at least in a big area. You might not know all the details, but there are principles that you can follow, and then you get experts to support you to understand the details. AI Act, something that is new. Who has heard of AI Act in this room? Thank you. I just want to check that you're not asleep. Thanks. Good. So AI Act, very good. It's been now approved this year, and there will be many different steps where parts of it will actually be effective. Very end until 27. And it's no longer, compared to GDPR, GDPR is really about data itself from the processor and the provider, and who is having data, how storage, processing, and so on. But the AI Act is about how AI is used, what AI is used for. And then we will also go a bit into more details about these two. Oh, very interesting also. AI Act is actually the first of its kind so far worldwide. So EU, the European Union is really top front here, going for regulatory to protect the people. And then we can see, let's see how well we can keep up with the other areas of the world that are not that upfront in this area, but really just going for innovation technology itself. And the goal here, I think from EU side, is to say we are innovative, but at the same time protecting people and compliant. So I think for larger future outcome, I would hope that everyone who sits here can really contribute to having a innovative, but also compliant future altogether. So speaking of data GDPR, we spoke of GDPR, that's within EU. And all over the world, we also have actually other siblings. It's not only EU that has data privacy, data protection laws. Everywhere else we also have, and there are some shared dimensions that are general. Some are less strict. I would say that EU GDPR is the most strict in the world. That is also why if you have other companies, other data products coming into Europe, where you want to really land here as a product assistant, that you face problems, that you face stricter rules, and that you have to potentially also restructure your systems and make sure that your models also are compliant. However, the general shared dimensions are similar. It's about data minimization, meaning you collect only as much data as you really need. Don't be too greedy with the data you collect, especially if it's about user data, people, consumer data. And that also goes together with purpose limitations, so only those that really you have a purpose for. And also the consent, as we just mentioned with one of the fines before, where we said, if you collect some data from the user, they need to know, either in terms of use or in your privacy policies or in your cookies, they need to know that you're collecting this data. Anonymization/pseudonymization. If you have data collected about individuals, especially if you have e-commerce, for example, then you need to make sure that everybody else who is in this company working with this data will not know who it is. So meaning all the customers that you have, or the consumer customers, they need to be in your system, either anonymized, if you don't need to be able to retrace this person's name, or they have to be pseudonymized, that everybody else who works on this data doesn't know who they are, but they can de-pseudonymize. So by the end of a model, they can trace back, say, hey, this voucher, after this AI modeling, this voucher should go to person A or B. So these are very different areas of generally compliance dimensions that actually almost all data privacy laws need you to fulfill. Security, retention, and so on. And then the question is, what exactly is there? So yeah, so speaking of the EU's GDPR, we just spoke about the global part. Speaking of just the EU's GDPR, these are the main dimensions. We spoke already about a few of them. And we also especially have this very, very specific part that not everyone has. That's the right of access, right to be forgotten, right to be informed from the user perspective. So every user, if you're buying on Amazon, if you're buying on Zalando, if you're buying on any platforms, you are allowed to request, to ask what data has been collected from you, and where and through what and how and where it's stored. Not only through e-commerce platforms, also from your doctors. I just recently myself, half a year ago, set a data request and to one of my doctors and asked, where did you get my data from? Because they sent my bill to somebody else, which should not have happened. So data privacy, data protection is super important, and we also as users should know about them, that we have these rights. Okay, these are the main key dimensions. And speaking of AI Act, as mentioned, AI Act is not specific to data or some models or some technical setup, but it's actually about the purpose. So what AI Act did is they have classified, there's a classification with respect to the risk of a data or AI product that you can run into. And then the regulation of the AI Act is based on the classified risk level. Even bans are possible if needed. And then we have these 4 different risk classes. The unacceptable risks, these are those that are crucial for life, death, health, and so on. For example, healthcare, medicine, or if you're also in mechanical engineering, if you're actually developing a robot arm for doing surgeries, that also falls into this category. And then we have the just high risk, as well as limited risk, normal risk, and so on. I think normally, financial depends, but normally if we are in everyday service, also if you are in consumer business, then mostly it's about limited risk and normal risks. If you have just marketing, target marketing, and so on, that will be not life to death threatening. So that's the risk level also a bit. So how do you do it then if you have all these, we have all these regulatories and so on? First of all, there are examples that, for example, Amazon is doing, the AWS. They're now saying, hey, we want to build responsible AI. There's a lot of tech behind. I'm not going into details there. But also some people did is IBM and also AWS, they are now partnering up. So they want to say, we want to build responsible AI, where our data is saved and transferred and used in the proper way, where our AI is, the models that we build, they are responsible, as of no bias, all tracked and so on. And if you're a company where you say, we would like to enter the AI field, we're not sure about it, partner up with people, partner up with other organizations, ask experts for support. That is the right way to do. No need to be not going for it, but be brave and go for it, but with the right people. So, speaking of AI Act, I'm pretty sure you know about it, just another reminder. As mentioned, this is about potential risks of models, right, or of AI and data products. So that means it's not only about data anymore, but about AI as a product. What does it actually mean? Because very often I talk to people and people are like, hey, what about AI? And they only actually talk about LLMs. They're only talking about GPTs, which is only a small, tiny part of the whole picture. So just to bring this to your attention again, all the tech people in this room, they know about it. Please just have a break. We have, generally speaking, the general, right, AI, in which space we also have all the robotics and all the fuzzy logics and so on. A smaller part of it is actually the machine learning part, where we have also the predictive analytics that we had a lot used in decision-making, data-driven decision-making, it's called back then, and also decision trees and all of that, time series forecastings, sales forecastings, that all belongs into this field. Then we have, in machine learning, there's a part that's deep learning. Deep learning is, well, many, many layers within a neural network. And the very, very first part is actually multi-layer perceptron. That's like many years ago. And use cases for deep learning started off with image recognition, autonomous guided vehicles, and so on. We have some already from NEO here, so also, right, autonomous driving partially, and also fault detection and so on. And within the deep learning, there is a tiny part that is then generative AI. LLMs, transformers, this is technically speaking a tiny, tiny part. So if you speak out about AI and what to use, how to use, let's speak about a bit larger field. It's not only about the generative models, ChatGPTs, Midjourneys, and so on that we can use, but also how can we use AI as of intelligent machines broader in our business. Okay, and because if you need to think about AI Act, this is all the things that you need to think about, not only about how can we use DLEs, Midjourneys in our companies, but also potentially everything else is within your AI space. Don't forget that. Good. Compliance in AI. Why it matters even without fine. Because I was thinking, we saw now these 1.3 billion fines that Meta had. And then people might say, yeah, but I don't have, even 4% of my turnover, yearly turnover, fiscal year wouldn't give me 1.3 billion. I don't mind. It's not only about the fines from a legal perspective that is important to make you think about GDPR and GDPR compliance, but also about, generally speaking, what does it mean about your company, about your organization? That it's about fairness and bias prevention. It's about promotion and also compliant ethical use. It's about trust building with your users, your customers, also your stakeholders, your partners, and also risk mitigation. Risk mitigation, of course, is again related to data breaches and GDPR compliance and so on. So even if you say, my turnover is not that much, I'm non-profit anyway, still, you should still think of compliance in your organization. And I've now structured the compliance part in AI challenges in 4 to 5 main dimensions. We could actually put together infrastructure and security in one, more or less. So we're speaking about mindset and culture, then infrastructure tech and security, data models, that models are non-biased, for example, that's very important. And we also speak about law, regulations, GDPR, AI Act, and so on. Why am I starting this way? We need to understand that from a technical perspective, yes, AI models are AI models. That's technical. However, it is important for the whole company to understand how they should use it in a compliant and secure and safe way. Let's go to the next steps. So, as a data privacy, let's say, guidelines, we can say, first of all, we want to make sure that the data that we use should only serve the customers or the users with better products, their stories, experience, and also that should be specified in terms of use. So what is your purpose of your platform, of your service, of your products that you provide? And this should be specified in your terms of service, terms of use, and your privacy regulations. Transparency of how users or customer data is handled. You need to be able to clearly communicate. That is actually in privacy policies. And where you need to have very clear and simple communications that allow, and you also need to allow the customers for data request. So did I show you that? There was one case where a company was fined because although they had everything set, however, the data request that one of the customers, the few customers did, they didn't follow in time. And this was a neglect of the GDPR compliance. So you need to make sure that your customers and users can get information about their data, how it's used, what's used, when, and so on, within the time range that's not too long. You need to be able to give your customers the choice on how the data is used. For example, when you go on a website, the first time you go, there's always a pop-up, I hope. Okay. There's a pop-up that says functional cookies, necessary cookies. What else is there? Some analytics cookies, some marketing cookies, and some have only 5, some have 32, or even more. My default setting is please no to all, except for the necessary ones. However, that's of course giving me less service. So some of these websites or these platforms, they use the way how you scroll their website. They use this information to give you, to analyze your behavior and to say, okay, she is more interested in flowers that are red. Okay, not necessarily true. So she's more interested in this kind of products, of that features, and then they would rather show me this as next ones. But this is about cookies. This is about if I'm allowing them. So I, as a user, need to be allowing them that they're allowed to use this data for me this way. If I say no to this category in the pop-up where the cookies consent is given, then I would not be able to get targeted show of products on their web page. At least that's the theory. If they actually do it the right way, that depends on the implementation. Until somebody sues them, it might never come out. Okay, this is how the cookie part, yes?
Is there a statistic about how many microseconds per word in those acceptances is usually spent?
I'm pretty sure there are, but I haven't looked in there.
I know myself how I do it, click, yes, except or otherwise. Exactly.
That's also what I do normally. On the other hand, there are also some other pages like news pages, right? They're saying, either you accept all my cookies or you have to pay an abonnement. Okay, I accept the cookies. So this is also some things that people do, that organizations do and web pages do, to get the data. I mean, they need the data, I understand. Otherwise, they cannot provide the better personalized service. However, the question is, are you telling your people this way that you're actually doing it the right way? Thank you for your question. Yes, so we were here at the customers should have the choice to say how my data is used and what for. And also embedding privacy and security into business practices at each stage of development of each product and service, especially also delivery period. So that's also this is not very technical. That goes in, I mean, the setting up the whole pipeline of the whole infrastructure, the pipelines, the data pipelines, the also modeling pipelines, also training pipelines. If you have models, right? Or also reportings, dashboards, all these pipelines, they should be really set up that they are compliant, secure, safe. And then also last but not least, the last category is about protecting data as an asset and shared only responsibly and also only if needed. If you think about data shareage, there are data where you need them to be shared with third parties. For example, healthcare. If I go to my doctors and they have some findings, then you want this data to be shared with hospitals or other experts. This data should be shared. However, only then when it's needed, right? So there are different cases where we cannot say for everybody no sharing, but it should be case depending and also industry depending. This is super important that you keep this in mind for where you're working, where are you, who are you, what's your role, what do you need to have it as a setup. And only when you are clear about what you need to set up, you then tell the tech team they will set it up. But first, you as a business, you need to understand where you are, right? Okay. So best practices. I wanted to have like, time is running. Oh, time is running. I'll be a bit shorter then, sorry. I have now 2 more slides. One is about data privacy, best practices for the privacy by design. That is like, how can you set it up from the beginning to make it compliant? And these are, what does it actually mean, privacy by design? It's about data protection through the technology design. That's what I meant by, you know what you want, what you need. That's your regulatory space, what's your cases, and then you set it up the way as you need, and the way how you set it up technically then is compliant. These are your main principles. I will not go through them one by one given time, but we can take it offline. You can ask or so for later follow-ups. And how to make it actually compliant in each organization, as mentioned before, I would say it's not only a technical problem. It's actually, first of all, we have the mindset. Everybody working in this company or in this organization should be aware of it. What does it mean? Can I just, talk about the people, talk about the data, talk about what we have found? No. How to talk about it, how to communicate, how to share, that's very specific. So this mindset and the culture should be really aligned with data process, GDPR. Organizational also. We spoke about tech, but on the other hand, if you think you have tech teams, very high profile, highly educated, high expertise. However, you have tech teams working in silos. Would that work? Mostly not, because technical people don't know about law. Lawyers don't know about tech. They don't know how to set it up, how it should be set up. You need actually collaborating cross-functional workforces. So make sure that you actually have such a workforce put together, that you really have the design of the governance itself, that you have a design for structure that is allowing for ethical implementation of processes, and also that you have actually large portfolio of different profiles, different perspectives putting together as a workforce, and also that you can provide from an organizational and also work package and workflow perspective, that you can provide users with access and the option to delete their data also when required this way. This is also part of GDPR requests. Technically speaking, then this is very technical, rather technical, that you have to make sure that you can assess, that you do assess the third-party data for accuracy and legality, that the data that other people provide to you, that they are actually received in a legally okay way. So if somebody said, hey, I got this data breach, no, don't take it. You should actually report it. That you have developed systems, that these systems are developed that and they do facilitate compliance auditing. For example, if you have data transferred from one to the other place, then you should have ROPA put in place. ROPA is record of processing activities. Okay, if you haven't heard of it, you can look it up or you can let me know later. So ROPA is something that you can use to say, where is my data from A to B, end to end? What stations did it go to? How did it go? Where were interim results put? And are they deleted again or not? And that's the whole ROPA, record of processing activities. And then we also have, monitoring algorithms, and that you need to make sure that you're protected. This is a non-exhaustive list of things that you can do to make sure that you're privacy by design, that your whole setup is following privacy by design. At the same time, most of our companies, that people who sit here, you already have data. You're established companies, you're established organizations. So you won't have the chance to do privacy by design. You have something that you need to work with, that you need to transform and change to get privacy, to get compliant to GDPR. And additionally to what we just said before, that's what you need to achieve. You also need to probably put more effort into retraining people, into put things together that you have the cross-functional workforces put together, either take people from different teams or add some other people, such that you have these options of having these combined workforces. And you also need to do a proper gap analysis. Take a close look at your systems you have currently. Where are you? What part of that is at high risk, of middle risk, low risk? Which part have you already seen in previous fines that you've seen in the suit cases? And what do you really need to solve next? And then, given all these, especially gap analysis, you need to then tidy up and restructure. And please avoid technical debt, because I have seen organizations and companies saying, no, let's still develop another feature and another feature, another feature, because customers want them or investors want another feature. And then the technical debt has been sitting there. I'm like, no, if you keep it this way even longer, then you will, first of all, soon be sued if you get there, or you might actually have other problems even before you get sued, because suing takes a long time. So this is really, and also the more you grow, the larger you are, the harder it is to resolve these issues. So make it as early as possible. Coming back to this very first slide, 2 more minutes. Thank you. Very first slide, I wanted to also maybe show you a bit to think about. There are 2 examples that I took out, but would you think about a bit what could be done or what could you do to avoid this kind of fine at least. One of them is Meta. This part where we're saying, hey, the Facebook users, EU, their data was transferred to the US. And US has, less strict GDPR. What could you do? The problem here is, oh, I'm out of picture, sorry. So the problem is, we cannot easily change the US laws, right? So meaning we need to do something about our organization, how to restructure. If we were Meta, and now the data currently, the data flow is, data from the EU is flown to the US. What would you do? Remove the sensitive data, but all the names are in there. That's sensitive. What do? Do not transfer data. Thank you. I'm just repeating so that everybody can hear also online. Do not transfer data. Very good. So you probably need to have a different setup, a different center, data center. That's an EU, where data is not flowing to the US. Or you wait, you can either do it this way and keep it forever, or if you really want to keep it in the US at some point, actually EU and US, they're talking now about another agreement of data protection and so on. Once that is set, maybe you can transfer it again. But until then, keep it in the EU, full stop, right? Yes, here I also blanked out a bit personal data. It's the processing part and third countries. These are the parts that this fine was released because they were really, these main aspects were totally related to. And exactly as you mentioned, just keep the data in the EU. Another example is Amazon 21, when we said the 886 million fine. What would you do here? As a reminder, they got this fine especially because they were using the data for targeting without people knowing about it. Louder. Consent, yes, very good, thank you. Just make sure that your consent you're putting, it's maybe not just about consent itself, could also be in your terms of use, in your privacy policies, all these documents that you need to provide. I know nobody reads them, but it needs to be there. It needs to be there in a way that people can understand it. Good, very good, thank you very much. That's, oh yes, last takeaway. If you're an organization, don't panic. There's always a solution to everything, almost everything. And also second, make sure from an organizational perspective, you don't work in silos. This is very important, that you have actually different components and competencies and people and workforce working together. And then also technically speaking, avoid technical debts. That's one thing that I really would like to advise everybody to think about. Don't wait when it's for too long. Yes, we need to innovate. Yes, we need to be having high speed, but also think about how to set up the structure in a way that it's already compliant. And often it's only 2 steps more. Or maybe if you're at the beginning, it's only 1 or 2 weeks more if you set things up at the beginning. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Min. And now we have another couple of minutes open for questions. Quick reminder to the audience online, if you want to post any questions via Slido, the platform is open, you can submit your questions, but we start taking some first questions from the audience. Please, Min, have a seat.
Thank you.
And yes, we have a first question there. If you could just please speak into the microphone.
Hello, thank you, Min, as always, for your expertise and sharing it with us. I actually have 2 questions. So first one, you talked about privacy by design, which for us as users of most of these services is what we would want. But what do you say to your company clients when I'm sure that they say, yeah, we can do that, but does that not put us somehow at a competitive disadvantage?
Competitive as in short term as of innovation speed or as of what? That's a question we have often. So I think I understand the point. However, if you speak about innovation speed, if you think about, for example, model development, then to be fast here, you have POCs, MVPs at the beginning, right? And while you're having your capacities working with these competencies, working on the POCs and MVPs, that's for the models. At the same time, you can have your architects, your strategists, your data governance people, you have your data engineer people, at the same time working on your setup. And also then when the MEP is done, putting this in space, that should be not battling each other with time. Right.
Thank you. And then I have one more, then I'll stop. But so the second question is, so I'm working at 50 Hertz. We run the high voltage electricity grid here for our region. What would you say to companies like mine that might say, this doesn't concern us because we don't really deal with external people or personal data?
You have employee data, by the way. Give me a second. Oh, can I have my slides back? Sorry. Thank you. So I agree. There are industries where the product and service you provide is not consumer relevant. It's not user relevant. However, you have employees and whoever works in your company. So you always have some people that you have in your environment. And If we go back to this slide, yes, this one. This is a very interesting case, might actually affect, you can talk about it in your company. H&M, they got fined 35 million. It's not 1.3 billion, but still 35 million, because there was a very tiny 24 hours window where somehow data could be viewed and could be collected from outside, and people found out that H&M was collecting sensitive employee data, and that was then used to create profiles and then used in employment processes. I would still look into GDPR. Right? It's not only about the fine, but it's also about company branding. How much are you trustworthy?
Yeah.
Thank you for your question.
Any other questions? Yes, we have a question up there.
I mean, thanks for sharing your insights. I just wanted to ask, like in the case of Amazon, it was pretty direct that they used the data to target them. But what if they're using the consumer data without consent, just for training their models and maybe restructuring their supply chain or something internal which is not directly visible? Will it still be inside, will still be considered in GDPR, and how will you regulate that?
Okay, so I'm not a lawyer, okay? But how I would say is the following. You had two questions, actually. The one is about how would you use the data if it's not for targeted marketing purpose. So there's no emails, no app notification pushes and so on, but it's actually just for modeling, training and so on. Still, you would need to write it down that you're collecting this data. So if you use this data for some model training, then what is the purpose of this model if you need this data? It's for supply chain? I don't think so. I really doubt it, right?
It can be, I'm just making a hypothetical assumption here. It can be just to optimize and use the supply chain assumption, because I think Amazon does that. It generates data where it has to put which product and which region is more in demand, so things like that.
Okay, I see. I see. You still need consent. You still need consent for that. Definitely, because it's so in GDPR, it's not only about what you do in the next steps with the data, but the fact that you're collecting this data. You need consent for that. So it's not only about the processing and the pipelines later on. The fact that you're collecting, because if I'm a user of Amazon, of course, I have the right to request information. What data of mine has been collected, is collected? What do you store? How long? How do you process it? What models and so on. If I want, I can really go for details and ask for it. Welcome.
I've just got a question about alignment. There's obviously vastly different sort of regulatory practices across the world. And one challenge for European companies, for example, tracking their supply chains is recording data that's coming from China, where they have a very different sort of, framework. Do you think that there should be some kind of, international, leveling out of these frameworks or alignment, or is it always going to be a challenge that different territories require different data governance?
This is a very good question. I had quite some chats about this question in the last 2-3 weeks, actually. I was in China. I'm from China myself. And I was in China end of May, and I had a lot of discussions also about this area with different colleagues, enterprises, and so on. I was hoping people would level out at some point. I don't think so anymore. It's not only from China, but also US and EU. So there will be some levels where all will reach similar understanding. However, given cultural differences, given different political standings, and also priorities, you will have even different definitions of what is sensitive data. For example, Europe, health data, super sensitive. I hope my health data will not get anywhere. That's also why I was so upset when my invoice from the one doctors got sent to my mother, which is why and how, right? But if you're in China, then maybe, and this is also still sensitive. However, there was having another understanding of awareness. For example, if you're having IoT sensors where you're just tracking if the LKW, the transporter, is driving this or the other way, then if you have the aggregated data of transporters with sensors of weight, of loads, and so on, that might give you information about aggregation of people, of political things, of maybe also army information and so on. These are things where people are like, okay, this is sensitive data. So there's a different understanding of sensitivity in here also, right? And that's actually more use case specific. That's actually more in the next level of what can we do with the data? What's the insight that you can find out from this data? It's no longer on the data GDPR level as we see it here in Europe. So you need experts who can give you all these details.
We have 2 more questions. I'm mindful of time, so maybe let's take 2 or 3 more questions and then we'll wrap it up. So please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I want to return to the last question. So you also mentioned that the different data protection laws in different countries or different governments, they are very different, right? And the GDPR is the most strict one, yeah. But somehow it makes developing AI in Europe or in European Union super expensive now. And getting data in Europe or getting data in Europe in a legal way and train a large language model could be very difficult, right? How do you see this problem, and how do you see the opportunity of Europe in this area?
That's a very tricky question. I hope I'm not leaning too wide out of the window then when I answer. So I think we still have quite good opportunities as of depending on which area you're in. So if you can make sure that the way how you use the data, that it's anonymized, pseudonymized, and so on, you can use the data. Of course, this is as similar to what you mentioned, right? The speed of innovation. You will not be able to directly target the actual thing you want to solve. You first need to make sure that what you use as data for your model, the input to the model, or how the model saves the data, how the model uses the data, that this part is compliant. So that will be some bottleneck. But I still think that it's possible. It's more challenging for sure.
Yeah, maybe last question up there. For you.
You spoke about pseudo anonymization before, and I was wondering, when is it enough to pseudo anonymize so that the data is still traceable at the end by certain people, as you mentioned, that, for example, only management can actually trace back the data to certain people? No? Okay.
You finished
so
your
then,
question.
So then the first part of the question, when is pseudo anonymization enough, and when does data completely have to be anonymized for you to be able to use it?
Yeah. Thank you. That's a very good question. I should have given an example, then things will be clear. Examples coming now. So, for example, if you are doing targeted marketing, as we mentioned, e-commerce, AWS, Amazon, right, all these e-commerce companies. If you do targeted marketing, then you are collecting the data, right? After collection of the data, before you put it in a model, it should be anonymized or pseudonymized. So whatever you do afterwards, this should be having some, let's say, protection layer, okay? So meaning I will not know, I don't know any names of you. So you will not have the name and ID and address section put in the model, but rather how you are behaving on the platform, what's your history in purchasing and so on. And then so in this case, you just have an ID as of this is this person, that's a hash ID potentially. So I don't know who it is. In this case of targeting, the thing is, whatever comes out by the end of the model prediction, it could be, hey, I should target you for this category, this product, or maybe at least this category, and then tomorrow or at some point, or these and those categories, I need to know it's you, right? So for this use case, I need to be able to retrace back this score for this hash ID gets this score for this category for the targeted marketing should be Max Münlermann, something like this, right? So this is something you need to be able to do the de-pseudonymization and then trace back. That's what I mean. So this is a very specific use case. If you don't have this kind of business-related use cases and you have no rights to only pseudonymize the data, then you will probably need to be able to, you probably have to anonymize the data.
So now I'll unfortunately try and wrap this up. We are already 5 minutes over time. Min is going to be around for a couple of while longer to address your questions. I would like to address one final question from my end to you. So imagine I am a CEO manager of a company, and I'm really contemplating of embarking more strongly on the path of AI, but I can't find sleep at night because there's the risk of committing some kind of data infringements. What would you tell me are the 2 or 3 things I should check next Monday whether I'm on the right track of avoiding some big data failure?
I hope you have an IT tech team. You have a responsible
I
person.
have that.
Okay, talk to them first. I hope you have a legal team with data protection officers and experts in there. Talk to them, let them talk to each other and find out where you stand.
So making that gap analysis first. and
Exactly.
My status quo clear.
I would do that first.
All right.
If you don't have them internally, get somebody who knows that outside.
And get some expert. Yes, I heard that as well during their presentation. Talk to the experts. So we've started with that tonight, talking to the experts. Thank you very much again for your time, Min. And again, welcoming you for some chit chat now after the session. And thank you very much for everybody online joining us tonight. I hope you enjoyed the session and hope to see you back in some way or other here at the ESMT. Have a great evening.
Thank you all.